In its 6th episode, Lovecraft County explored Atticus Freeman's days in the Korean War, where he bumps into the Kumiho, Korea's horrific succubus-like rendition of the legendary nine-tailed fox. Unlike its Chinese and Japanese variants, Korea's version is way more hardcore, with a taste for human bits and a penchant for masquerading as gorgeous women in order to lure in unsuspecting guys for a deadly feast. In Korea, seeing a fox is like catching a glimpse of the Grim Reaper, which is clearly a major step up or step down from the trickster image foxes have in other cultures. Nevertheless, the Kumiho in Lovecraft County plays a huge role in the story and sticks around right till the end. So, in this video, let's begin by exploring the mythological origin of the Kumiho before diving into Lovecraft County's version of this Korean entity. Before we get right into it, we do have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Kumiho from Korean mythology. In East Asian folklore, the Kumiho, or Gumiho, refers to the Korean version of the mystical nine-tailed fox, much like its cousins, the Chinese Hulijing, the Japanese Kitsune, and Vietnam's Ho Li Tin. The reason why the Kumiho is so famous and depicted in movies and TV shows across the globe is that this shapeshifter is all about the good looks and drama that comes with it. It can effortlessly morph into a stunning lady to charm the crap out of unsuspecting dudes. Of course, there's a rather dark twist to it all. She's usually after their liver or heart, depending on which story you hear. The Kumiho stars in a bunch of stories, all loaded with suspense and intrigue, and you can catch some of these tales in the Compendium of Korean Oral Literature. But how old is the legend of the Kumiho? To answer this, we can dip our noses into ancient texts. The very first mention of the nine-tailed fox is in the classic Of Mountains and Seas, which is basically a classical Chinese text in which there are several stories about legends and folktales. Here, it is said that the mythical fox hails from Jingzhou, basically a green hill somewhere 300 miles east. This spot was also essentially an older version of Korea. I'm talking about way back when it was part of the Three Kingdoms. Interestingly, this text also mentions Gojoseon, an ancient Korean kingdom, as its own thing. The whole nine-tailed fox story across cultures is pretty similar. They're these old foxes filled with mystical energy, and when they reach the grand old age of 1,000 years, they mysteriously get the ability to shapeshift, typically into women. But while China's Hulijin and Japan's Kitsune could be friends or foes, Korea's Kumiho is pretty famous for being more on the dark side. They munch on human flesh or look for souls to level up to some higher existence. It's a bit of a mystery when the Kumiho become known as the definitive villains in Japanese folklore, since there are old tales of them being quite the helpers to humans. But I believe this all happened because of the Japanese occupation of Korea. You see, in 1910, the Empire of Japan annexed Korea after years of war, intimidation, and political machinations. After 1910, Korea would be considered a part of Japan until 1945. However, it often becomes difficult for the occupants if their subjects have strong cultural roots. So, in order to establish control over its new protectorate, the Empire of Japan waged an all-out war on Korean culture. Now, since the Japanese and their culture were seen as evil, the Kumiho was also villainized in the Korean version, which is why the Korean Kumiho that appears in Lovecraft County is seen as a vengeful evil spirit with a monstrous outlook, instead of the more elegant Japanese version with 9 beautiful tails. So we've established that the Kumiho can shapeshift, but if we're to go by the mythology, they can't fully shake off their foxy attributes. Whether it's a pair of ears, a fox-like face, or those eponymous 9 tails, there's always something giving them away. And get this, in one story, a Kumiho manages to pass as a bride until someone peeps under her dress. But is it like once a Kumiho, always a Kumiho? Or can a Kumiho transform into a mortal human? Well, these foxes are super secretive about their true selves, of course, but legends say if they can stop munching on humans for 1,000 days, they can turn into a human for real. But there are other methods you could try if you were a Kumiho trying to turn into a human. Some say 1,000 years of vegan living will do the trick, but others suggest taking a magical gem and moonbathing it every month. Some versions suggest these mystical foxes lose all their mischief and malice when they change into humans. Kumiho from Lovecraft County. The 6th episode of Lovecraft County takes us on a time jump and a trip over the pond to explore a chapter of Atticus's life we hadn't seen before. Episode 6, Meet Me in Daegu, tells the tale of Atticus's foreign ex-girlfriend Ji-Ah that was played by Jamie Chung. Up until now, Ji-Ah had been kind of mysterious and appeared just twice with some seriously eerie vibes that left Atticus all kinds of perplexed without a clue why. Cut to Daegu, South Korea, 1949. Ji-Ah is in a cinema, getting lost in Judy Garland's world in Meet Me in St. Louis, which is also a play on the episode's title. Post-show, with the theater empty, she's caught up in a daydream and dances to the trolley song. This musical moment brings back memories of Tick's own dreamy escape in the first episode while he's knocked out reading A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Ji-ah's life is nothing like the jolly and glamorous Judy Garland films she escapes into. She works hard as a nursing student and barely makes ends meet with her mom Soon-hee, aka Uma, who's pretty much pushing her towards finding a guy to bail them out of their hardships. But how would a man help them escape their hardship? Well, we're about to find out. At first glance, it looks like Uma is nudging her towards the world's oldest profession, and it seems rather strange because Ji-ah is doing rather well at her nursing school. After a failed attempt at playing matchmaker with her nurse pals, Ji-ah tells her BFF, Young Ja, about her mom's pressure. Young Ja tries to console her by saying that sometimes moms play for their own team, not necessarily what's best for their kids. But Ji-ah knows that she has to bring home a man, and later she ends up taking a dude home from a bar, and what starts as a steamy hookup takes a pretty disastrous turn. For the guy, of course. You see, Ji-ah transforms into a Kumiho, unleashing 9 tails from all over and tapping into the guy's life force before literally tearing him apart. The blood bathes the entire room as the man explodes inside out, and Uma walks in like it's just another day. In fact, she tells Ji-ah that they need 10 more. In the summer of 1950, Ji-ah was back at the movies, this time lost in the Easter parade by Judy Garland, when suddenly, the ground shook. The whole cinema runs outside to find American troops on the streets tossing flyers that promise safety and peace. The Korean War starting, Ji-ah now had a whole new set of fears, American soldiers included. However, things between Ji-ah and Uma got super tense as Ji-ah seems tired of what she's been doing. You know, the whole making love to men before obliterating them into pieces thing. Uma, on the other hand, wants Ji-ah to use the chaos of war to snatch the last couple of souls she needs to ditch her Kumiho spirit and turn human for good. So yeah, it's now revealed that Ji-ah had a 9-tailed fox spirit inside her. Uma called this Kumiho into play to get rid of her husband, and now Ji-ah's stuck with not just his memories, but the memories of every guy she ever soul-snatched. Once Ji-ah hits that 100 soul mark, she's supposed to turn back into Uma's actual daughter, minus the fox spirit shenanigans. After a brutal shift at the triage center, dealing with American soldiers hurling abuse and racist jabs her way, Ji-ah tries telling Young Ja a few secrets about how she's different from the crowd, only to discover her friend was a communist. They witness the public execution of a communist man, with American soldiers just standing around without moving a muscle. Young Ja compares the blind judgment of anti-communist Koreans to Ji-ah's mom's inability to see her for who she truly is, emphasizing there's nothing wrong with being different. Despite Uma's claims that Ji-ah lacks humanity, Ji-ah proves her wrong by luring a soldier home and killing him in her signature Kumiho style. With this kill, Ji-ah's tally stands at 99, and she needs just one more soul. Uma pushes her to claim that last soul and revert to her real daughter, but Ji-ah is conflicted and feels almost no connection to Soon-hee's daughter. In fact, all she remembers are her husband's memories of abuse and torture. Uma tries to justify her actions by condemning the husband's abusive love, revealing she summoned the Kumiho to kill him after he abused Ji-ah. Yet, Ji-ah sees no innocence in Uma and even calls her out for having a child out of wedlock and choosing a life of comfort over her daughter's safety. She says that Uma basically allowed Ji-ah's abuse by her stepfather and equated Uma's notion of love to her husband's twisted version. The next day, Ji-ah and her fellow nurses find themselves kneeling and blindfolded, with American soldiers accusing them of communist ties after finding incriminating evidence. The tension only rises when a black soldier executes one nurse, despite knowing that she was not the one they were looking for. He then pulls the trigger on another one, but the gun clicks empty. Relief is short-lived though, as Atticus Freeman stepped up, showing no hesitation in killing another nurse, and the blood splashed onto Ji-ah. Clearly, Atticus was not the most honorable soldier. Young Ja finally admits to being the communist informant and is swiftly taken away, which leaves Ji-ah in a state of shock and horror. In the fall of 1950, at work, Ji-ah spots Tick, now a patient and clearly wounded from a bombing. Seeing him, a storm of rage fills her, yet Tick, oblivious to their past, is visibly broken, unable to even read due to his injuries and shattered glasses, and he breaks down into tears. That night, Ji-ah tells Uma she's found the final soul she needs to claim, Atticus. Ironically, her last step to humanity is through the man who's both her victim and her unwitting torturer. The next day, as Ji-ah is changing Tick's sheets, he jumps in to help despite his injuries. You see, he had been on bed rest for far too long and needed something to do. After they finish, Tic asks Jia to read to him The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas, a favorite of his dad's, as viewers found out before. Jia tries to give away the ending, thinking she'll spoil it for him, but Tic catches on that she's only seen the movie, not flipped the pages of the book. He tries to pass her the book so that she can read it to him, but she simply isn't interested. However, Jia starts to warm up to Tic, and she begins to see that they're both in the business of dodging reality. While she throws herself into the world created by Judy Garland's movies, he drowns himself in bookish adventures. Tic shares that books used to be his escape, but they stopped being enough, which led him to the army. Now, in South Korea, he's back to seeking refuge in pages. Their bond grows as they spend time together and gradually find common ground in their struggles with their parents trying to mold them into something they're not. After Tic gets better, he asks Jia out. She heads over to the base and ends up getting harassed by some soldiers. Thinking the worst when she's taken to a tent, she finds Tic there instead, suited up and holding a rose. He was ready to surprise her with a private screening of Judy Garland's Summer Stock. During the film, they share their first kiss and later head back to Jia's place. Tic opens up and tells Jia that he's a virgin and he's never felt this way about anyone, and he thanks Jia for seeing the good in him. Things heat up between them, but as Jia feels her Kumiho spirit surfacing, she panics and tells Tic to leave, leaving their encounter unfinished and abruptly ending. Uma barges in, mad that Jia didn't go through with the killing. Jia confesses she's never truly felt love until now, despite having mimicked it frequently before. Uma lashes out and calls her a monster for having feelings for the man who killed her best friend. However, Jia confronts Tic at the base the next day and tells him how he killed her best friend, Young Jia. Tic, shocked and defensive, insists he was just following orders. He feels betrayed because he feels that Jia played him, but Jia acknowledges their shared history of doing terrible things and says that they aren't monsters, but can choose to be the better versions of themselves that they see in each other. They share another kiss and find solace in each other's arms in an empty tent, where Jia manages to keep her monstrous side at bay, at least for now. That night, Jia speaks to Uma and confesses her love for Atticus. She's all like, "I've got my tails under control," but Uma's like, "He's only into you because he doesn't know the real you." She meant the whole Kumiho thing, of course, but what she was actually saying was that it was a matter of time before Jia ended up hurting him one way or another. By the time the winter of 1950 comes around, things between Jia and Tic were looking pretty cozy. Jia decides to share a bedtime story. She makes the most of her opportunity and ends up reading out a story about the nine-tailed fox spirit known for morphing into a gorgeous woman to settle scores with bad men. Just as she was about to tell him that she was, in fact, the fox lady from her story, Tic told her that he had enough points to head home, but could choose to stay back if that's what Jia wanted. She was clearly torn, but she pointed out how much he despises the war. When Tic suggested she head back with him, she declined. Tic says, "Nothing you say could change how I feel, but it doesn't take long before he has a change of heart." Jia and Tic get close, and her Kumiho tales come to visit our man. Jia tries to reel them back in, but they connect with Tic, giving her a front-seat tour of his life, his bond with his mom, his bookworm phase, the rough times with his dad, and even the torturous things he did to young Jia. Then, she gets a glimpse into Tic's future, his return to Chicago, a new girl named Letty, and a vision of him hooked up to a device on the brink of death. Panicked, Jia pushes Tic away and warns him about his fate if he heads home. Tic obviously gets freaked out, big time. He doesn't stick around to make sense of it all and escapes, but he does leave Jia heartbroken. She's left in tears, and for the first time, Uma offers some genuine motherly comfort. Seeking answers, Jia and Uma come to meet the shaman. Uma tells the shaman that she's ready to pay whatever price for her daughter's peace of mind. Jia saw a guy's death like never before and wants to know if it's for real. Is Atticus gonna make it? She asks. The shaman goes all mystical and burns a paper that drifts away in ashes, and then tells Jia something along the lines of, "Girl, you're just getting started with this Kumiho thing. There's a whole lot more death in your future before you're through." Just like that, episode 6 wraps up. Jia and Atticus are still worlds apart, and Tic's fate seems pretty much up in the air. Later, in episodes 8 and 10, Jia appears again. Jia comes to Chicago with a mission, to tell Tic that he's on a tightrope with fate. She tells him everything about her Kumiho side, and basically says that she was this fox spirit that killed her lovers to see their entire lives until their deaths. However, she didn't want to kill Tic, and simply wanted to know his story. When things get steamy, her tales do the Grim Reaper dance. However, Tic was curious about his end, but Jia knew nothing about the when or how. Later, at the Drake Hotel, Tic admits to Jia that their thing was legit. He thought pretending to have forgotten about their past could somehow cheat his future. In the end, Jia becomes the reason why white people are stripped of their magical abilities. Marvelous verdict! So that's the Kumiho for you, a force that can kill without a thought. But we gotta admit, as far as Asian magical creatures are concerned, a Kumiho is in the minor leagues. But one thing's crystal clear, Lovecraft County went above and beyond by diving deep into supernatural tales way beyond the usual American and English horror stories. The show's spin on the unique Kumiho legend felt like a breath of fresh air. It's not the first time this myth reached the screens, but this time it definitely left a mark. That's it for this time, but if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.